never felt like down. I never felt like down.
What's up, guys? Hello and welcome to my first video of 2020. It has been quite a while since my last upload, but that's because I've been spending a lot of time working on this, so I hope the wait is worth it. For my last video, I did a challenge run of Shin Megami Tensei 4 where I played through the entire game without fusing any demons. I had a lot of fun with it, and you guys all seemed to enjoy that video, so naturally, doing another challenge run video was inevitable. I was originally planning to do a no buff run of SMT Nocturne, but sadly my low-end laptop cannot handle emulating PS2 games and recording at the same times. So I'm going to have to put that video off until later. Instead, for my next challenge run, I decided to do an Orpheus only run of Persona 3 Portable, mainly because Persona 3 Portable is on the PSP, which is one of the easiest consoles to emulate, and it's been a while since I've done a video that's just Persona focused. As always, let's lay down the list of rules. The first and most important rule is that I cannot switch personas at any time. I have to have my original Orpheus equipped the entire run. That also means I can't use Orpheus Telos. Rule number 2 is that I have to be playing on Maniac mode. Rule number 3 is that I cannot be playing on New Game Plus. Not that I think it'll make a difference in this case, but either way, it's going to be something I make clear for future videos. And rule number 4 is no save states. Now, even though I'm emulating, I consider the use of pretty much any external enhancements cheating. The only one that I'm making an exception for is the speed button, which I won't be showing any footage of, but I will be using in this run because this game is insanely long. Now, notice how the rules don't say anything about fusing personas or using the compendium. That's because in order to keep Orpheus useful, we're going to need to teach him new skills with skill cards. And the main way we get skill cards is by leveling up new personas that we fused. Since we can't use them in battle, social links are going to be our main way of leveling up personas quickly, so even though I can't equip the new personas, I'm still allowed to have them for their skill cards. Now that we have our rules, it's time to begin the game. We watch the opening, which I can't show because if I do, it's going to get content ID'd. We get to the title screen, choose new game, and now it's time to choose which protagonist to play as. Now, I know this is going to disappoint some of you, but because I want this playthrough to be a more traditional experience of Persona 3, I'm going to be playing as the male protagonist. We choose Maniac as our difficulty, and now we can start the game. We go through the introductory cutscene where we get off the train and walk to the dorm during the dark hour. Once we get there, we meet Pharos, and he gives us the contract where we enter our name. I was going to name myself Nyarly Kashihara, but because I don't have enough room, I name myself Nyarly Kuruso instead. We meet Yukari and Mitsuru, and then the next day we head to school. Here we meet Junpei and a lot of our potential social link characters. Right now, there's not really much to do in the game. These first couple days are just kind of the game introducing us to its world. We have a dream where we meet Elizabeth and Igor in the Velvet Room, and then not long after, we wake up to find out our dorm is being attacked by a giant shadow. This is where we awaken to our power, and it's also where we meet the only persona we're going to be using this entire playthrough, Orpheus. But he temporarily turns into Thanatos. I'm not going to count this as using another persona because it's during a cutscene. Once Thanatos turns back into Orpheus, we get the combat tutorial, and it's pretty basic. The only skill we have right now is Bash, so I just used that to finish off the remaining enemies. Now, as far as emulation goes, running and recording work just fine. My only issue is some weird box that flickers over the characters' faces when they blink, but overall, the game runs great. After that, we get knocked out and we see Igor again, who explains the mechanics of social links and the Velvet Room to us. We wake up 2 weeks later, we go back to school, then go back to the dorm where our dorm mates explain personas, shadows, and the dark hour, and then we agree to join C's. This begins our first social link, the Fool. The next day, Junpei joins, and we can now go to Tartarus. We go through the second tutorial pretty easily by spamming Agi, which is what most enemies on this floor are weak to. Unfortunately, Mitsuru only lets us go to one floor. The next day is the first day where we actually have free time. For those of you that are new to the series, this is where you do things like rake up social links or increase your social stats. But you can also mess around and do other things if you want. I decide to go to the arcade. Here you can play games that do one of two things: increase your social stats or your persona stats depending on which game you play. Throughout the run, I'm going to be coming here a lot to buff Orpheus' stats. Raising your persona stats isn't all that good normally because you usually just fuse away your personas after a few levels, but in this case, it's definitely something I'm going to need to do a lot in order to keep Orpheus useful. Soon after, I start the Magician social link, and the day after that, I join a sports club to start the Chariot social link. Whatever sport you choose doesn't really matter, it's the same arcana and the same characters either way, but I decide on Kendo, because I think sword fighting is way cooler than just running around in circles. Anyway, I go to Tartarus that same night, and now that we can go as high as the game will let us, I decide to get it all out of the way in one night. We go through the floors pretty easily, but that changes when we get to the boss. This boss is weak to Yukari's bow, but because it's Yukari, she keeps missing shots, and overall I just get really unlucky with RNG. So I die on the first attempt. The second attempt goes much better though. Makoto scores 2 critical hits and kills one of the shadows. Yukari misses a few shots, but Makoto lands another critical hit and kills the second one. Makoto gets a lucky critical hit on the last one, and that concludes the battle. After that, I continue to push onward to the next boss. The floor enemies are slightly stronger, but still no big deal. The next boss is weak to strike attacks, but it has all elemental magic, so it just spams whatever my party is weak to and kills me. The next attempt doesn't go much better. I decide to make one dizzy instead of all out attacking them all, but the other one just uses Tentarafu, which prevents me from moving, and I just get finished off the same way. The next attempt goes about the same way, except I get a whole lot luckier. My Makoto dodges the Tentarafus, and they don't go for my weaknesses as much. It is a close battle, but I'm able to defeat them.
Not bad, huh?
I get to the third boss, and he also turns out to be extremely hard. He has Mizuo and Tarukaja, and he blocks all physical attacks. And he's resistant to fire, so I can't damage him with either Makoto or Junpei. The only thing I can do is just spam Garu with Yukari while having Junpei and Makoto use magic stones while praying he doesn't go for Mizuo. On the first attempt I come close, but I get owned in the last second. The second attempt he immediately goes for Assault Dive and kills Yukari, and because I don't have any revival beads, I just reset the game. The third attempt, I get obliterated by Mizuo in the first few turns. And after the fourth failed attempt, I give up and decide to go back and grind a little bit. During this time, my Orpheus learns Tarunda, which is an essential skill for single bosses. Unfortunately though, after I learn it, I get an empty floor and Yukari runs into the Reaper, which knocks her out and makes her tired. So I decide to go home and come back later. The next day, I go to the bookstore to meet the old couple and start the Hierophant social link. Now that I have a good amount of social links started, I decide to spend the next few days doing my usual routine. When I go back to Tartarus, I get extremely lucky with the boss this time, because he doesn't go for Mizuo until the very end, and even when he does, I have Tarunda, which cuts his attack in half. The boss goes down after just a few magic attacks, and with that, I am done with the first block of Tartarus. The next day, I get a call from Elizabeth about her requests. Normally, I don't bother with these, but I can actually get skill cards from some of them, so in this case, I will be doing more of them. Up until the next full moon, I'm basically just doing my normal thing, ranking up social links and increasing my stats. May 9th finally comes around, and now it's time to fight the next big boss, which we fight on a train. This part isn't hard at all. The enemies go down really easily, and the boss isn't much of a challenge either. It keeps trying to distract us by summoning minions, and for some reason I seem to be missing more than usual, but it doesn't take many hits for the boss to go down. We stop the train, and we are safe.
Did we stop?
I think so.
And now it's back to the usual grind. I wake up the next morning and tune into Tanaka's show to find out that the Garu and Zio skill cards are on sale, which I immediately teach to Orpheus because I am in desperate need of some new skills because I am still stuck with Orpheus's default skills right now. Later, I get the Chariot social link high enough that I'm now able to start a new social link, Yuko's social link, which is the Strength. And later, I find out that I have midterms coming up. I spend most of my time before midterms getting my academics up through Wakatsu Restaurant and playing the quiz game. Once midterms are over, we get our 4th party member, Akihiko. And now that I have 4 party members, I decide to move on to the next block of Tartarus. As we make our way up Tartarus, we get the Miragi skill card from Elizabeth for getting a certain item for her, giving us our first multi-target move. Unfortunately, that doesn't really help us against the first boss, because it's weak to ice attacks, which I don't have yet, so my only option is to just keep hitting it with what I do have. It also keeps spamming Poison Mist, which I don't have time to get rid of, so I kinda just have to live with it. Because I also don't have any multi-target healing moves, my only option for keeping my party's HP up is by spamming Cadniza, while the other 3 party members chip away at its health. After several minutes of doing this, I somehow defeat the boss on my first attempt.
Here's a chance. Let's get him. Get back here, you son of a...
The next boss, on the other hand, takes 2 attempts because it's more of the same. It keeps spamming Poison Mist and it has no weakness. It also hits a lot harder than the last one, and I can't heal my entire party because I used up all my Cadnizas on the last boss. On my second attempt, I get lucky and shock it with electricity, which opens it up to critical hits from physical attacks, which I use to knock it down and make it dizzy, preventing it from getting up and dealing any damage to me. By the time it does get up, its HP is already extremely low, and it's not able to do anything significant before I'm able to beat it.
That was close. Good thing you had me.
Not long after, we reach the top of Tartarus again, where we get the second old document and show it to Elizabeth, who gives us the Recarm skill card for it. Once we get back to school, we get our exam scores back, and we find out that we scored the highest thanks to all our studying. And by studying, I mean eating ramen and playing arcade games. If only studying in real life was that easy. Now, for the exams, if we score in the top 10, not only does it raise our charm, but Mitsuru will also give us a deck of cards. These are cards that we can use on our Orpheus as another way to increase his stats. And if we score the highest, she'll also throw in a skill card. The one we get this time is the Diorama skill card, which I immediately teach to Orpheus. A few days later, we complete our first social link, the Magician. Now, even though I've already completed the second block of Tartarus, I go back to Tartarus to do some more grinding. I make sure to do this when it's unstable, because during this time, rare events are more likely to happen. For example, this floor right here is filled with strong enemies, the ones that glow purple, which in this block are the Hulk Hogans. Going to Tartarus when it's unstable is a good way to grind for experience, money, or rare items. Once we're back, we max out the old couple's Hierophant social link, and then we start Maiko's social link, the Hanged Man. Eventually, the next full moon comes around. This one involves infiltrating the school at night to rescue a student who got trapped in there overnight. We get temporarily separated from the group at the start, but even though we're by ourselves, we beat the common enemies really easily. After we meet Fuka, it's finally time to fight the boss. And they don't put up much of a fight. We can easily see their weaknesses, and we see that one is weak to physical attacks while the other is weak to magic. On top of that, they don't do much damage with their normal attacks. Akihiko gets killed by an unlucky Swift Strike, but we can easily revive him with our new Recarm skill. After just a couple of hits, the Empress goes down, and not long after, the Emperor goes down, and the battle is over. Once again, it's back to the usual, but now the antique shop is open. Here I can fuse personas with weapons to make special weapons, which is definitely going to help me out since I have no use for personas besides skill cards. But what's even more important is that here we can also buy skill cards and point cards with gems. You know those rocks you pick up from enemies in Tartarus sometimes? Yeah, save those up. For now, I just buy a handful of point cards and the Regenerate and Invigorate 3 skill cards. A few days later, Fuka joins us, meaning we can now use Mitsuru in combat, but we still gotta wait before we can go back to Tartarus. In the meantime, I just work on my social links and start the automatic death social link with Pharaohs. When we finally are able to go back to Tartarus, Mitsuru proves to be a lot better than she is in FES, since here I can actually control her so that she doesn't just spam Mare and Karin. I don't have any problems with any of the new enemies, and the bosses are pretty easy too. The first one is weak to electricity, so after being knocked down by a few Zeos and a few all-out attacks, they're gone. The second boss doesn't have any strong attacks or anything I'm weak against, but he does have a lot of HP, so it's basically just another endurance battle. Before I head out, I decide to go and do a little grinding since Tartarus is still unstable. Here, I get some Nihil weapons and my Orpheus's bash mutates into Power Slash. On June 17th, I get the chance to join another club. It's another case like the sports clubs where it doesn't matter which one, but I decide on the music club, which starts the Fortune social link. I don't know why I chose music though, maybe it's just all the anime I've watched involving musical clubs. Anyway, a few days later, I max out the Chariot social link and start the Moon social link with the Gourmet King. This one is especially important because of the persona Gur, who gives us the Growth 1 skill card, which will finally make it possible to level up personas without using them. Later in the evening, I also start the Tower social link with Mutatsu, and soon after we get the Moon social link high enough for Gur to reach level 18, so we fuse him, and then he levels up and gives us his Growth 1 skill card. But we don't use it just yet. We're going to make copies of it. Yeah, it's actually possible to farm skill cards in the Naganaki Shrine. There's this thing in a box that'll copy the skill cards for you. You just give him a skill card, come back 5 days later, and now you have 2 of it. The only time I go back to Tartarus before the next full moon is to rescue the people that wandered in there. Yeah, sometimes Elizabeth will call you to tell you that people have wandered into Tartarus. If you save them, Officer Kurosawa will give you rewards, usually money, but sometimes skill cards or equipment. It's also possible for social link characters to wander in, so in this case, if you fail, your social link will stop dead in its tracks. Anyways, the next full moon does come, and this is the first full moon boss that gives us major problems. It has Mazionga, which both me and Yukari are weak to, and because I'm required to have Yukari for this part, I can't really do much about having her on my team. But not only that, it also has fear-inflicting skills, which if it hits, it makes his attacks do even more damage against us, and sometimes we won't be able to move. The first boss kills us before we can do a lot of damage. Now, the worst part about this whole situation is that because enemies in the hotel are super low level, we can't really do much to grind. Somehow, though, we're able to beat the boss on the second attempt after a lot of stalling and a lot of luck. After that, we get this infamous cutscene with Yukari in the shower, and then we find out that that actually wasn't the main boss that we have to defeat. Thankfully, though, the main boss is a whole lot easier. It doesn't have any electric skills, and its ailment skills have a lot lower probability of hitting. Without any difficulty, and on our first attempt, we take it out. Once we get back, we learn more about the Dark Hour, and then we get some pretty emotional cutscenes from the cast. This is actually one of my favorite moments in the game, and it really shows how well developed these characters are. Not long after that, we have more exams, which seem to go well, thankfully. Once exams are over, it's time to prepare to go to Yakushima. But before we leave, I decide to get the next block of Tartarus out of the way. While in there, I fuse Shisa, whose skill card gives me Gale Slash, my first medium damage move, which I swap with Orpheus' Power Slash. The first 2 bosses are really easy, but the third boss kicks my butt in the first 3 attempts. He has Mazionga, which, as you've probably figured out, is the bane of my existence, but even without the additional weakness damage, it still does enough to almost kill most of my party. On top of that, this thing has some insane defense and no weaknesses. My party members' attacks do almost nothing, and I can't attack with Makoto because if I'm not defending, he'll be open to Mazionga. I replace Yukari with Mitsuru since she's not weak against electricity, but other than that, there's really no reliable strategy. The best thing I can do is just chip away at his health while trying to stay alive, and hope Junpei knocks it down with a critical hit since he's in great condition. On the 4th attempt, I somehow scrape my way through. It cost me 2 Somas and a Megiddo gem, but I make it.
Here, you son of a...
After another free day, we finally get to Yakushima. Here we learn more about the plot, how Yukari's dad died working for the Kirijo group, which causes Yukari to get emotional, so we decide to go and comfort her. The next day, we have to do this pointless minigame called Operation Babe Hunt, and at the end of it, we meet everyone's favorite robo-waifu, Aegis.
My highest priority is to be with you.
What? I can't believe this!
After Yakushima, everything goes back to normal. We get our exam grades, and once again, we're the highest in our class. This time, the skill card we get is Mataru Kaja, which I teach Orpheus in place of Taruna. I also max out the Moon social link and start the Hermit social link. The Hermit is the one you get from playing Persona 2, or sorry, Innocent Sin Online, but this whole game is basically just one big reference to Persona 2. Yeah, remember when Atlas actually acknowledged the existence of the first two Persona games? Anyway, we have a kendo tournament over the summer where we meet a guy named Mamoru. He's going to be our star social link character. The next full moon comes, and then we finally come face to face with Strega, a team of Persona users led by Revolver Jesus. They lock us in the shelter, forcing us to fight the Shadow, even though that's what we were going to do anyway, and the boss isn't hard at all. We do a good amount of damage to it every turn, and it uses physical attacks, so we don't have to worry about it hitting any of our weaknesses. It also has this thing where it can unite and split apart, but that doesn't really make things all that different, as we just keep attacking them, and soon enough, it's gone.
Do it!
After that, Koromaru gets added to our party, and then we find out we have to do summer school for a little bit, so there goes any time we could have spent on social links. It's kind of annoying, but at least it raises our academics. Once summer school is over, I pretty much spend the rest of the summer working on the Hermit social link, since that's going to be difficult to do once school starts. It's not long before I get this social link maxed. That same day, we have Ken join us as a party member, and then I decide to go to Tartarus to complete the next block. Ken and Koromaru are actually proving to be a lot better party members than I remember, and their starting moves are a lot better than most of the other cast right now. The first bosses are super easy. We knock them all down with Koromaru's Agilao, and a single all-out attack almost finishes them. All it takes to finish them off is a Gale Slash. Before the next boss, I fuse a Lamia, who gives me the Agilao skill card, making this my first medium magic attack. For the second boss, right off the bat, the enemy goes for Magarudyne, which kills Akihiko. I revive him, and it goes for it again, so instead of wasting my time reviving Akihiko just for the boss to kill him, I reset the game and change things up. Thankfully, in the second attempt, Akihiko is able to debuff it before I can do anything. Ken knocks it down with a lucky critical hit, and then almost finishes it off with a cruel attack. Makoto finishes it off with a regular attack, and after that, we're done with the fourth block. Soon enough, the second semester starts, meaning I can finally get back to my school social links. And before the next full moon, Shinjiro joins us. Now, even though he's a pretty good party member, I'm not going to waste my time leveling him up for reasons you'll find out about soon enough. The next full moon comes, and Junpei gets kidnapped, so we can't use him, but he's kind of underleveled anyway. Now, the boss for this full moon isn't particularly strong, but he does specialize in electric attacks, so I'm a little worried. Thankfully, though, the boss goes down pretty easily. Just buffs, debuffs, and attacks. Though in Persona, it's a little more annoying because they wear off after a few turns. But overall, the fight doesn't give us any real trouble. He doesn't hit Makoto with any electric moves, thankfully, and no party members die. He also has this charge move, but that just leaves him open to attack. And before it hits, we can just defend to reduce the damage. After taking enough damage, we defeat the boss. Before going to Tartarus, we buy the Megiddo skill card from Tanaka's show, being our first almighty skill, and then we start the Sun social link with Akinari, who's dying from a terminal disease. We also get the Meteorama skill card from one of the people we saved from Tartarus earlier, which I used to replace Diorama, and then max out the Tower social link with Butatsu. When we do go back to Tartarus, we fuse Kurama Tengu, who gives us Cruel Attack, and Komokutin, who gives us Counter Strike. The first boss of the new block isn't too hard. It's weak to ice, but I don't have Mitsuru with me, so I just spam Megiddo instead. It takes a while, but we beat it. But after that, a regular enemy on the next floor kills me, so I reset the game and then find out that I forgot to save after the last boss. So I refight the boss, but this time I make sure to do it with Mitsuru with me, and this time it goes down a lot faster. And now we have to fight the Sleeping Table, one of the most infamous bosses in Persona 3. And to be honest, I've never really had that much of a problem with it. When we fight the Sleeping Table, it uses Miragi-Dine, which knocks out Mitsuru, but after that, it doesn't really give us much of a problem. Other than that, I handle this battle the same way as all the others. Before long, we defeat the Sleeping Table on our first attempt.
The battle's over. No shadows are left.
When we get back from Tartarus, I find out that we have enough gems to buy our most important skill card of the whole playthrough, Growth 3, which I immediately begin farming at the shrine. Before the next full moon, I work on some more social links, including starting the Devil and the Lovers social links, which I can now start because I have my charm maxed out. The Lovers I've never actually done before, so I'm curious to see how this goes. Also, the school festival is coming up, but unfortunately a typhoon hits which knocks us out for 3 days, during which time the entirety of Persona Q takes place, but all I remember is Igor telling me about special fusions. After this, it's just more of the same. I max out the Hanged Man social link, and then on September 24th, we get this cutscene where we're assigned group cleanup and we goof off. Now, there isn't much purpose to the scene itself, but this is where the game scolds you for dating multiple girls. It doesn't happen this time since I've only been working on one girl's social link so far, but the game has given me flack for it in previous runs. And that's one of the biggest issues I have with this game. You pretty much cannot do a social link with a female character without them falling in love with you. Like, why? In a game like this, I need all the help with social links I can get, but I don't want to romance multiple girls at the same time, so what do? It's either be a cheating D-bag or just play the game with only half the social links. Okay, rant over. After this, I complete the Strength social link and fuse some personas for new skill cards. One of them being Gigantic Fist, my first heavy skill, and the other being Herculean Strike. Not long after this, Strength becomes the first stat that Orpheus is maxed out on thanks to all our point cards and punching games. And we create Okuni Nushi, who we teach Growth 3. We need him for his apt pupil skill card, which boosts our critical rate. We get this block of Tartarus done just in time for the full moon boss, and this is another one of those bosses that's actually two bosses. The one on the left disappears while the one on the right attacks. The one on the left uses this roulette wheel, which has different effects depending on what the wheel lands on. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but as long as we press X on the blue, we seem to be good. But there is one instance where we get about 1 pixel off for one of them, which completely screws us up. It inflicts fear on the entire party, and thanks to RNG, nobody in our party is able to move to use a Mipatra Stone. Because fear also raises your vulnerability to critical hits, the boss just kills everyone except for Makoto with them. And then we later get the same thing on the boss, but does she get paralyzed with fear? No, she's just able to move around like normal. I really thought about resetting the game at this point, but I decided to just revive everyone and finish it off like normal. Thankfully, neither of these bosses have that much HP. A few Gigantic Fists later, and the first boss is out. Same thing with the second, and then the battle is over.
I've been waiting for this.
After the boss, we find out that Ken is out to get revenge on Shinjiro for killing his mother. But Revolver Jesus shows up and does it for him. Ken doesn't like this, so he just plans to let Revolver Jesus do the same to him. But we show up to stop him before he can. The next morning, we go to Shinjiro's funeral at school. Yeah, they were able to organize that funeral pretty fast. Anyway, this is a part of the game where we learn a lot about Akihiko, Shinjiro, and Ken's past. This is also when the cast starts awakening to their new personas. Akihiko's persona becomes Kaisar, and then Ken's becomes Kalanemi. Unfortunately, now we have exams coming up again, meaning nobody wants to hang out. All we can do is study. We finally get academics maxed out, meaning we don't have to study ever again. I wish real life were like this. Once we go to Tartarus, we're not actually in a new block, but we still have new enemies. And the first bosses have Mazio-Dine. It's like every boss in this game was made to mess up Orpheus only runs. Well, Thankfully, though, Makoto does dodge most of the boss's Mesiodynes, though the boss is able to get the better of Akihiko and Ken, and they go down. We do get pretty lucky with Herculean Strike, which lands us some critical hits, and we're able to defeat the boss on the first attempt. The next boss is also pretty annoying. It has high counter, so half of our physical attacks are going to get reflected, and its attacks do a whole lot of damage. Somehow, though, we're lucky enough to shock the enemy with a Zionga, which means any physical attack is guaranteed to get a critical hit. I go for one, and thankfully it doesn't get countered, knocking it down, and then we're able to finish it with an all-out attack. After this, I decide to do a bit of grinding, during which time Orpheus gets maxed out on magic, and we complete one of Elizabeth's requests where the reward is rubies. Because of this, we now have the right gemstones to buy the Resist Elect skill card from the shop. That's right, it took half the game, but we finally found a way to counter Orpheus's electric weakness, the thing that's been the bane of our existence this entire game. We then get our exam grades back to find out once again that we're the highest in our class. So our reward this time is the Bufudyne skill card, which I teach Orpheus in place of Beediorama. I also maximize his agility by playing Mole Whackers soon after. Before the next full moon, Fuka's persona evolves, I finish Bebe's Temperance social link, Tanaka's Devil social link, and Mamoru's Star social link. And I rescue some people from Tartarus, one of my rewards for doing so being the high counter skill cards, which I swap Counter-Strike with. The November full moon comes, and it is finally time to beat the last full moon shadow. But before we fight it, we have to fight Strega. And this is probably the easiest boss so far. Jin doesn't even get the chance to attack. One critical hit knocks him down, and then the party finishes him off easily. The same happens to Takaya, and he goes down after a single all-out attack.
This can't be.
Now, as for the Shadow, we can't hit him until we defeat his minions, but they all go down with a single Herculean strike. The main boss doesn't have any strong attacks, and he mostly wastes his turns to summon more minions, which we can beat just as easily as the earlier ones. The main boss doesn't have a lot of HP, and our attacks are doing a whole lot of damage. Without much trouble, the boss goes down.
Persona!
The next morning, we complete our social link with Pharos, and now it's time to celebrate. Or so we think. The Dark Hour still happens, and it turns out that Ikutsuki was lying to us the whole time. We find out the truth about the Dark Hour, the Shadows, the Fall, and learn about Ikutsuki's true intentions. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for him.
What? I was so close.
Father!
Unfortunately for us, Mitsuru's dad dies too, and now we have no idea what to do. We get another moment of the characters reflecting, and during this part, Yukari awakens to her ultimate persona. Yeah, I'm not going to say who it is. Also, apparently we missed one of the rescue missions, even though I could have sworn Elizabeth never told me that there was a third person last I checked, but whatever. The skill card we missed was Endure, so we can still get it from Hellbiker if we need it. At this point in the game, there's really not much left for me to do besides social links, but most days I don't actually have any social links to work on. The only stat I haven't maximized is Courage, so even though I don't really need it, I decide to work on that anyway. Also, before Tartarus opens up again, we get a new character named Ryoji who transfers into our school. He's not a social link character or a party member, but he is very important to the plot. As soon as Tartarus does open up again, I decide to get it out of the way early. We get Heatwave from Dionysus, which makes normal encounters even easier than before. Most of them go down after a single Heatwave, so I don't even really need to worry about magic coverage at this point. I also get Orpheus up to 99 endurance, making him fully maxed out on every stat. Unfortunately though, this new block of Tartarus has not 2, not 3, but 5 bosses, which also means even more of the same looking floors to climb. Well, after about 2.5 hours of repetitive encounters and easy bosses, we make it to the top. I don't think I ever want to see Tartarus again after this, so I go back to school and continue working on more social links. Even though it's late and I probably won't have time to finish it, I start the Emperor social link because I don't really have anything else to do. A few days later, we leave for a field trip to Kyoto. There's really not much going on here other than Mitsuru's persona evolving and this dumb hot spring escape minigame. Basically, they change the bath from men to women without telling us, so the female cast walks in while we're still there, and now we have to escape. Whatever happens doesn't really seem to affect the game in the long run. It's just that if you fail, you get this dialogue where Mitsuru quote-unquote executes you, and I put that in quotes because the game doesn't actually make it clear what that means. Though I'm not exactly sure what happens if you succeed because I've never done it before, so I'm going to take this opportunity to find out. Somehow we intimidate a ghost and they're dumb enough to believe that the hot spring is actually haunted and they all leave. After that, the field trip is over and we go back home and get back to doing the same stuff that we've been doing, which at this point in the game is basically nothing. The only thing that happens is that we're woken up one night and we have to fight Chidori from Strega. And this is without doubt the easiest boss so far. I'm not even going to explain it. I'm just going to show you the whole thing in regular time. I'm not even going to speed it up.
I don't belong here. I've always known that. Nice shot! Takaya was right. You're a nuisance.
I've been waiting for this. Okay, now!
After that, Junpei gets shot by Takaya and dies. For some reason, even though he got hit by way worse things than Tartarus and never died to them. Did he get hit by a critical hit? I mean, it's also during the dark hour too, so I don't see why we can't just use Recarm or Diorama. Well, whatever, it's classic video game logic. Guns are useless in-game, but deadly in cutscenes. Well, either way, Chidori sacrifices herself for him, and Junpei's persona then evolves. Not long after this, I complete the Fortune social link with Keisuke. Now, during the next full moon, we don't get a boss this time, but we do learn the truth of who Ryoji really is. Aigis tries to beat him up, but ends up getting destroyed instead. He then tells us about Nyx and the fall. He says that we can kill him and we won't know what's going on, or we can try to fight Nyx and inevitably fail. He gives us the month to make our decision. Though for some reason, I can't do anything during this time because nobody wants to do anything. I can't even go to Tartarus. Literally all I can do is just go home and skip everything. I can't even go to the council room to work on the Emperor social link. On the 10th of the month, the game finally lets us go back to Tartarus, but we can't actually go to the new block. All we can do is grind, so that's what I do. While there, we get enough rubies to buy the MegaTen skill card from the antique shop, which, yeah, of course I buy, making this my first and only severe magic skill. Now, speaking of severe skills, I was actually thinking about giving Orpheus Maralagidine from Mara for his severe magic skill, because in FES it was basically a multi-target Ragnarok. But for some dumb reason, in Portable, they nerfed it down from 650 base power to just 370. That's only 50 more than Maragidine. Just what the heck, game? Anyway, soon enough, it's time for our final exams, and we find out once again, for the 4th time in a row, that we scored the highest in our entire class. We then complete Akinari's social link and Yukari's social link, and even though I do love Yukari, I kinda already romanced Yuko, and if you remember what I said earlier about the game not letting you do female social links without romancing them, well, yeah, Yukari falls in love with us.
I'm only gonna say this once, okay?
Stupid little sucker!
Whew, I said it.
Because we now have nothing to do on Saturdays, I decide to start the Empress social link with Mitsuru, which we can now do because we have max academics, even though I doubt I'll be able to finish it. Shortly after this though, school goes on break, and we can no longer work on any of our school social links. All we can do is grind and sleep. I make sure to fuse personas that'll give us important skills and give them growth 3, like Gabriel for Repel Dark, and Thor not for a skill, but for his heart item that nulls electric attacks. Now, I was actually planning to fuse Kartikeya too for Absorb Electric, but I found out that he was locked behind one of Elizabeth's date requests, which I missed, and if you miss one, you miss them all. That's bullcrap, but whatever, it's too late to go back. Soon enough, Aegis comes back and she awakens to her ultimate persona, and then it finally comes the time to decide whether or not we want to kill Ryoji. Killing him gives you an early bad ending, kinda like the white ending in SMT4, so even though I could say I beat the game by doing this, I want to get the true ending, so I decide to spare him. Doing this maxes out the Fool social link and starts the Judgment social link. Now, this last month of the game is probably one of the most depressing moments of any video game I've ever played. Everyone thinks that they're going to die and they're just living out their remaining days before the world ends, and the music only sets the mood even more. Definitely one of the most immersive moments of any video game. After the break, we're able to start the Aeon social link with Aegis, and for this one, we cannot afford to miss a single date if we want to complete it. We can also go to the last block of Tartarus, and moving up ranks up the Judgment social link. There's also this thing on the bottom floor called the Paradigm Door, but it just contains some repeat boss battles and some optional boss battles, which we actually can't do, because for them it gives you different personas, and that would be violating the rules. So after doing the first optional boss just to see what it is, I decide to just skip the Paradigm Door. In the new block of Tartarus, I decide to do the first couple floors solo. That way I can quickly get Makoto up to level 82, because at that level, I'm high enough to fuse all the personas with all the skills I need. My Uriel gives me the Deathbound skill card, which helps us with grinding, even though we won't be using it very long. My Thor gives us the pair of lightning gloves. My Gabriel gives us both the Frozen Stone and the Repel Dark skill card. Thanatos gives us the Ring of Darkness, and Atis gives us the Enduring Soul skill card. Now, remember how earlier I said I missed the chance to get the Absorb Electric skill card? Well, because of that, I'm instead going to replace Resist Electric with Enduring Soul and give Makoto the Lightning Gloves to hold, which voids his electric weakness. Also, the reason I needed to grind to level 82 is because the highest level persona I need is Shiva, who gives us the skill card for Pralaya, the best physical skill in the game. It does severe pierce damage to all enemies, and it has a crazy high critical rate, which, with Apt Pupil, is almost a guaranteed critical hit. Eventually, I do get the skill card from Shiva, and now I have all the moves I need. Though, before going back, I changed my mind about Orpheus's affinities. I swap Weapons Master for Resist Electric again, and I have Makoto hold the Tome of the Void, which I just got from Abaddon to protect him from ailments. I go back to Tartarus to complete it once I have Ken and Akihiko's ultimate weapons, and Pralaya makes everything after this a complete joke. Pretty much every enemy, whether it be just a regular encounter or a boss, they all just get knocked down after 1 or 2 Pralayas due to the insane critical rate, and then we can easily finish them off with an all-out attack. We then make it to the top and complete the Judgment social link. We then go back and max out Aegis' social link, where we... well...
My most important component is located there. I want you to touch it. I want to leave indelible proof in this body of the understanding that you and I have reached. I apologize in advance if I say something odd or make unusual noises. Will you untie my ribbon?
And to my surprise, we actually complete Mitsuru's social link as well. And yeah, it's the same deal as Yukari's social link. But after that, the days go by, and then it is finally time. January 31st, 2010. Wow, that's almost 10 years after the time I upload this video. Huh. Well, anyway, for my final party, I go with Ken for healing, Aegis for buffs, and Akihiko for debuffs. All party members except Aegis are holding their ultimate weapon, and all of them have equipment to cover their weaknesses. And before we finish the game, let's take one good look at our final Orpheus. We have all stats maxed with Pralaya, Apt Pupil, Megadolon, High Counter, Resist Electric, Spellmaster, Enduring Soul, and Repel Dark. Now that our final party is ready, it's time to go to the top of Tartarus. But before we can confront Nyx, we have to fight Strega. Surprisingly, Jin doesn't go down in the first turn. He also scolds us for covering our weaknesses, but weakness or not, there's not much he can do. He does attack, but he wastes it using stagnant air. Immediately after that, we finish him off. We get another cutscene, and now it's time to face Takaya. The fight goes about the same. He doesn't die in one hit, and he doesn't die from an all-out attack, but he wastes his only turn, and we finish him off in the next one.
Death is but a blessing.
Now it's finally time to fight Nyx, or should I say, Nyx Avatar, who the party for some reason recognizes as Ryoji, but I don't see why, that thing looks nothing like Ryoji. Anyway, the Nyx Avatar fight has never been particularly difficult for me, it's just annoying. She's constantly changing Arcana, and every time she does this, she says, "The Arcana is the means by which all is revealed," and then her affinities change. But there's hardly any difference between any of these forms. Pralaya gets a critical hit almost every time, but what's bullcrap about this fight is that there's actually no way to knock Nyx down. Critical hits don't work, and because of that, we don't even get an extra turn from them. The only benefit we do get from the critical hits is the added damage. Another thing that's stupid about this fight is how debuffs work against her. Nyx gets 2 moves every turn, but for some reason each move counts as a new turn for the debuffs, meaning that they only last half as long. Even then though, Nyx doesn't really put up much of a challenge. Her attacks hardly do anything against Makoto, and they don't even hit half the time. There are a few instances where Nyx does get the better of us. She gets a couple of lucky critical hits with Almighty Attack and Deathbound, but none of these work on Makoto. The only party member who goes down at all during this fight is Akihiko, who we can easily revive with Ken's Samurai Charm. Some of her forms also have an array of insta-kill attacks. They don't kill us because of the homunculi we've been hoarding, but she still manages to hit at least one of our party members with each one pretty much every time, and it is kind of annoying. Another thing about Nyx is that she has a good amount of ailment-inducing skills too. She manages to land a few against our party members, and there's one instance in the battle where Makoto gets hit by a holy arrow, which normally would have charmed him, but didn't because he's holding the Tome of the Void. I definitely think I made the right decision in giving him that. Throughout the majority of the fight, Pralaya is our best attack. Even without the extra turns, we're able to do a whole lot of damage. We just spam Pralaya every chance we get. Nyx does have a few forms that block it, but for those we just use Megidolon instead. After a long fight, we bring her to her last form, where she has a move called Moonless Gown, where she'll reflect all attacks. The first time she uses it, for some reason, I don't expect it to work against Almighty, so I try Megidolon, but I end up being wrong and it gets reflected back at me. Normally that would have killed me, but because I have Enduring Soul, I'm still alive. Still, though, because I wasted that, I don't have a second chance. But even in this final form, Nyx doesn't do much to us. She has more moves, but it's nothing we haven't seen before, and her damage output doesn't even change that much. That being said, she does have a lot more health and is resistant to everything except Almighty. So instead of Pralaya, I just spam Megidolon. That's my strategy for this form. Just chip away at her health and then defend when Moonless Gown is active. After a long fight, and on our first attempt, Nyx Avatar is defeated. Even though we defeated Nyx Avatar, we're not done with the game just yet. We get some cutscenes, and then we get this awesome scripted battle against Nyx's real form, while the best version of Burn My Dread plays in the background. For this battle, we don't actually have a persona, but because it's scripted, I see it more of as an interactive cutscene than a battle, so I'm not counting it. We get some motivation from our friends, and after a few turns, we get the move that'll allow us to seal Nyx. We use it, and then the battle is over. Once the fight is over, we have officially saved the world. We get a very heartwarming cutscene with the rest of the cast, and then the game skips ahead to March 3rd. Because we defeated Nyx, though, nobody actually remembers anything about the Dark Hour, but we do get to talk to all our Social Link characters and see how they're doing. The next day, there's nothing to do, but the day after is graduation day. Mitsuru is giving her speech, and then everyone suddenly remembers everything. We then go to the rooftop to meet up. We get there with Aigis before everyone else, and after a very emotional speech, we can hear everyone's voices in the distance. But then, we start feeling sleepy. Our eyes start to feel heavy, the screen fades to white, and then the credits roll. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Persona 3. And now, we can officially say that it is possible to beat Persona 3 using only Orpheus. Well guys, that was a lot of fun. You know, even though I mostly did this playthrough for the gameplay, like holding down the speed button for a lot of it and skipping most of the dialogue, the ending still made me get really emotional. In fact, even just thinking about it is kind of getting to me. You probably can't hear it in my voice, but as I was writing the script for this video, I was tearing up. Persona 3 truly is a masterpiece. It has excellent and addicting gameplay, great characters, and a very deep and thought-provoking story, one that connects with me on a personal level. As of now, I've beat this game 4 times, and every time I go back to it, I find myself enjoying it more and more. Just like my No Fusion run of SMT4, this playthrough was a lot of fun, and again, even though it wasn't as difficult as I was expecting, it still forced me to really think about what I was doing, and come up with workarounds for me to keep progressing through the game. Challenge playthroughs are really something I'm starting to enjoy doing, and I will definitely get my no buff run of Nocturne done soon. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Be sure to rate, comment, and or subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me what you think. I also want to give a huge shout out to my Ko-Fi supporters for this video. If you enjoy my videos and want to support me, consider leaving me a donation on Ko-Fi for just $3. I really appreciate it, and it helps me out quite a lot. If you guys have any other suggestions for a challenge run of a Persona or MegaTen game, I would love to hear it. But until then, I will see you guys later.